Hi, this is Kashish. Welcome to a new episode of Business Odyssey.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi, based out in Bangalore, India.
Hello, I'm Laura, curious by nature. I am based in Argentina. Today, we are joined by Polina Van Liero. She is a freelance consultant focusing mainly on OKRs and Agile digital transformation. Polina talks today about the pitfalls of OKR implementations, as well as lesson learned, some challenges, and some key learnings from their experience across different industries and business. Happy learning. Hi, Polina. Nice to have you here. It's our pleasure to be for you to be our guest speaker today. So we always have an introduction on the episode description and at the beginning of the episode, but it will be nice if you introduce yourself to the audience so they get to know from you.
Of course. Hello, Laura. Hello, Lakshmi. Thank you so much for inviting me over. It's a great honor for me to participate in this podcast. My name is Polina. I'm a consultant already for 10 years. I've been consulting different companies in the international environment, in data management, the Agile transformation, and also OKRs. And I've dealt with companies in the past of 500 employees up to 550,000 employees. So quite a wide range of different scales and sizes. And I'm passionate about agility and OKRs and making a world a better place, one company at a time.
Indeed, yeah. So, okay, we thank you for the introduction. And as I say, it's our pleasure to have you here as a guest speakers, and particularly in the topic that we are going to talk about today, that is OKR, and how do we connect that to Agile and with the human-centric approach as well. So, what about if we start just to have a common understanding about what are OKRs? So everybody is on the same page.
Yeah, great. So OKRs are objectives and key results. And objectives are normally the outcomes that reflect current business priorities. So they're normally time-based, so we have a clear due date. They're non-numeric, so they're just purely qualitative. They're quite aspirational, so saying it with confidence sounds hard. And it really answers the question, what do I want to achieve without focusing on the tasks that will get me there? So we're really talking about kind of our North Star, where we're going, right? They're our big goal. And it's really there to kind of empower collaboration and cross-functionality across different teams. So it's there to unite the company and not work in silos so much. And key results, each objective has corresponding key results, normally 3, and these are numerical. So this is where we're talking about how do we know that we're achieving our objective, right? So what are the measurable kind of variables that we can use to see if we're actually making progress towards our objective? So they are the end result of a series of tasks, but they're also not the tasks themselves. And that's why we have a third component in OKRs, which are the initiatives. So this is really your to-do list. This is your backlog, sometimes even your roadmap, if you will. So this is your operational, list, which will bring you closer to your key results. And these initiatives are always a hypothesis, right? So you never know for sure whether they will provide actual progress towards your objective. And that's why it's so important to check in regularly and see if you're actually making progress. And if not, if you notice that you're not progressing as much as you'd expect during your check-in, then you can pivot and change the initiatives. And that way, OKRs are also really agile.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And when you were sharing with us, I was thinking about, okay, how do we embed that on the practical side with Agile? Because when we're talking about Agile, it's a big word. And so inside of that, we have, and combining also, we have Lean, we have Six Sigma, we have system thinking, and so on. And at the same time, we have Kanban, we have Scrumban at the same time. So in your experience, what has been the best approach that you had? And yes, while combining both Agile with OKRs.
Yeah, I've dealt with environments where we would indeed implement OKRs in agile environments where we would incorporate it into the agile transformation of the business as a whole, but also environments which were not agile, and which were using a more waterfall approach, or not even that, just having kind of more business as usual situations. Regularly, it's easier to implement in an agile environment. Why? Because OKRs are stretch goals, and they're also quite experimental in nature, especially with the initiatives that you're applying, right? So they're there for us to kind of shoot for the stars, make extreme, goals, and see how far we get along the way. So they really require a culture as well that's ready for that. Normally in agility, you do have that culture, right? Because that's also all about shorter feedback cycles, really working closely with the customer as well, and being open about, the lessons learned and kind of the challenges that you're coming across and how you could kind of tackle that. So in that way, it fits way better. And the way you cascade OKRs from kind of the top level, that's really talking about what the company would want to achieve, and maybe a little bit of, more of a long-term vision. So if you're talking about the kind of ultimate OKR, that could be valid for 5 to 7 years, right? That could be a very long-term vision. Then you would break it up to, top company OKRs, which are normally valid for a year. You would break that down to, quarterly OKRs, sometimes also on a group level or a departmental level. And after that, it cascades down to epics. And that's how it connects to, for instance, Scrum or that kind of backlog, where you're really bringing it down to the operational side, instead of just kind of the strategic, vision. And that's where you could break these OKRs down even further to, let's say, team level or even individual level, where the teams could say, okay, this is how we plan to contribute. So if you're trying to provide, for instance, the best onboarding experience, then, the website department could be working on that in their own way. But also the sales department could be working in a different way, right? Because sales is delivering customers and the website is delivering customers, but then more through self-service, for instance. So all of these departments could then find a way to connect to these OKRs and deliver value from their own side through their agile backlog.
I see. So there is an image that comes to my mind right now when you are describing from the whole company to the strategic, and then cascading down into quarters and to individuals and teams. So what I'm seeing there is a Kanban board or a Scrum board, maybe. I usually on Jira, because I use that, because you have the epic, you have the roadmap. So my point with that is, we are going to ask that question later about what has been your experience regarding the implementation side of the OKRs together with technology. But my question now is, what are the challenges that you have faced implementing the OKRs, and if there is a difference that you could highlight when a company is prepared from the cultural side, from the mindset side, to embrace OKR, and from the company that is not?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe first some sort of lessons learned, right? So when we just started implementing OKRs, what are the challenges we kind of come across, right? So the first one, and that happens really, really often, it also comes kind of from a culture, maybe a fear culture, or just fear of letting go of things, and a fear of kind of, focusing and narrowing down. Most of the time you start off with way too many OKRs. So a lot of companies just set, 20 goals, maybe 24 goals, right? So they come up with 5-6 objectives and they just put 5-6 key results in there. That's really a lot. That can't provide you with the right focus and all the things that you're not going to be doing. So you're kind of achieving mediocre results on all of these vast OKRs instead of really narrowing down and saying, okay, this quarter, this is what we absolutely must deliver. So a really kind of important lesson learned for us is that you should not be setting too many OKRs. So one objective and 3 key results is plenty, especially if you're talking about kind of, a quarterly level, because it's really important. Otherwise, the teams get distracted. There are no common goals, and you've just got low productivity, right? Another one that's really important is confusing key results with initiatives. So an example of that is, for instance, publishing 10 blogs, right? As a key metric, as a key result. That sounds like a measurable goal, but the question you should ask yourself is, what kind of effect does it have on my customer, right? So what is the result of that? So you publish 10 blogs, so what, right? A different way that you could frame kind of the same result is getting 5,000 views from our blogs, right? Because then you're suddenly talking about exposure, which you could convert to, let's say, that would deliver us 100 new customers, right? This is that kind of external validation, that effect on the customer that you're talking about, which is all about outcome instead of output. Which OKRs really revolve around. So you really need to think about, the effects that you've got and not just the stuff that you're producing, because then you actually don't know whether it's delivering any result that you're talking about. But publishing 10 blogs is not bad, right? It is a different level. So it's an initiative and not a key result. That would be a good hypothesis of how you could get to 100 new customers, for instance, from getting 5,000 views, right? So it's not bad, it's just a different level. It's on an executional level, an initiative. Another one is setting unmeasurable key results. So either they're not measurable at all, or you don't know what the baseline is. So you'll only know what that result is, let's say at the end of the quarter, which of course doesn't tell you anything because you don't know where you come from. So you can't tell whether you've actually made any progress. Or it's really difficult or expensive to track, which means you're investing more effort of, your analytics team, or maybe some members of your team, some managers, into, getting to that key result. So don't wait for the perfect metric, just use what you have, especially if it is consistent. So maybe it doesn't have the exact customer segment that you would want to track, but as long as what you're tracking in the beginning and at the end is the same, at least it's consistent, and that way you can, already get started. That doesn't mean you shouldn't invest in metrics, but you shouldn't think too long about it before you get started. So get started with what you have, and then you can kind of progress on the quality of the data and the key results as you go along. Then another one on kind of how challenging your key results should be, right? So when you are just setting your key results, it's important to hold a confidence vote. So basically just ask the team, do you think this key result is achievable this quarter? And if you've got 50% of the people who raise their hand, then you've got about 50% confidence. That's a good key result. If it's any lower, it's probably not achievable at all. And, if it's any higher, then you're not really shooting for the stars, right? So if at the end of the quarter, you get to 70% of that key result, then you've done a brilliant job, right? Because it was impossible to begin with. So that's what OKRs are really all about. It's about inspiring people to also think about it in a different way. So creating kind of a really tough, unachievable goal, and having the team figure out what they can do to make that goal. So it's not about business as usual. Really, it's about change and stretch goals. And the last one is setting and forgetting. So that you're forgetting to do check-ins, that you're not doing retrospectives, that you're not defining any actions based on your key results, right? So if you're evaluating, let's say halfway through the quarter and at the end of the quarter, if you're not learning anything from it, then there's also no added benefit to using OKRs. You might as well just have kind of a KPI dashboard, and again, using it more as business as usual, but OKRs are really there to drive change. So if you're not implementing these kind of check-in moments, there's really no added benefit to using OKRs as opposed to any other goal setting methodology. So these are kind of the key things, and they're really important to stick to when you're implementing, because it could prevent the teams from kind of believing that it's got any added benefit as well. So that's also really important that you're doing the implementation in a proper way to ensure success.
I see. So I think it's the right moment to ask this question. When we talk about OKRs, the S at the end, it's also about, it's not just plural, but sometimes it's related with the systems. And when I'm thinking about systems, I'm thinking also in technology. So what is the best approach that you have when doing the first iteration of OKRs in technology? I mean, what is the best approach and the recommendation for companies or teams that maybe are starting using OKRs?
Yeah, I think my experience really shows that there's a difference in the advice kind of that you would follow depending on the size of the team you're talking about. If you're talking about, a team of 100 people or a company of 100 people, it's really enough to save those OKRs just somewhere on a SharePoint site or in an Excel or, in a PowerPoint, and just update them regularly. If you're talking about larger scale teams or organizations, I would advise to go for OKR software. There's a lot of them out there. There's Purdue, there's BetterWorks, there's Monday, I believe, there's Week Done, there's so many different things out there. I believe Jira also has a goal kind of module in it. So does Asana. These systems provide you with transparency. So you are able to see what the status of a specific objective is at any given moment in time, and also who's busy with it. So who's the owner, who can I approach for an update? Who can I work together with to make this happen? In a smaller organization, you don't need that. So sometimes it provides kind of a larger administrative burden for the teams to fill it in and to, have another system to work with, et cetera, and provide updates there as well. But for larger organizations, I don't think you can do without, because somebody needs to make it visible for all of the teams, especially when you're working with so many different departments. And that's where I think a system is actually useful.
Got it. You explained it really clear in that sense. So yeah. So I wanted to ask you because you mentioned something that is something I usually ask. Also, it's about qualitative results. So if we are talking about that part, how do you, what are the best ones that you have seen in your clients when we are talking about qualitative results and not just quantitative?
Yeah. So in general, all objectives are qualitative, right? That's what you start with. And that's really good because it keeps it vague, and you really need that to have everybody in the team kind of fill it in for themselves and figure out, okay, what does it actually mean to me, right? Which provides them with a sense of empowerment and ownership so that they can provide their own, spin on it and a way to solve the issue at hand that we're all working together on as one organization. The best ones I've seen are things like, we want to be the best company in this niche, or we want to provide the best onboarding experience in that, or we want to make our experience as easy as ordering pizza, right? So these kinds of comparisons that kind of put a clear image in people's heads, even though it's different to everybody, to kind of inspire them to think outside the box and come up with solutions that nobody's come up with before.
I see. So I want also to understand, in your experience, how do you approach to people to make that switch and to start using the OKRs? Because you also work on the digital transformation. So when you start, when you approach to the company as a whole, I understand, I assume, please correct me if I'm wrong, you also need to talk with people to have that kind of conversation about what is the benefit, what is in there for me, and so on. So how do you approach that side?
For sure. And it's exactly what you're saying, really. So there's kind of three components to it. So you really discuss, most of the time, these requests come from upper management, right? Sometimes even from kind of higher up, maybe management from a different company where the head office is, right? And they all just say, we want to do digital transformation. We want to do agile transformation. That's going to make us more efficient. Yeah, why are we doing that? So that's the first question I always ask. Is there a clear why? So for agile transformation and also for the implementation of OKRs, why do we want to use OKRs? Have we thought about what we expect from this methodology? What kind of troubles are we facing right now that we expect it to solve, right? Because sometimes people develop kind of ideas about how that methodology is supposed to help them. And that's not what the methodology is for. So that's really important to discuss upfront, whether it's even fitting for the organization. And I see that way more with agility than I do with OKRs, because OKRs, as long as you're willing to experiment and kind of implement that change mindset and just be open to kind of new ideas and letting the employees figure themselves out, it will work also without an agile setting. Whereas agility is not always applicable to all kinds of businesses, right? You really need a complex environment where the result is not always fixed or known upfront, right? So if you have an assembly line and you're just building a bike and it always has two wheels and it always has a steering wheel and, you know, a light at the front and a light at the back, you don't need agility, right? You need Lean Six Sigma maybe, or some sort of quality control, but agility is not gonna make it any better for you. Whereas if you're building a really complex product like an app and you don't know what the final result is, and you could still be building it and improving it for another 20 years, right? Because there's always something to fix. There's always another functionality to improve. There's always a way to improve customer satisfaction, right? That's a great example for using agile efficiently. So it really depends on the context as well. OKRs are a little less dependent on that, but it's still really important to have a clear why for the implementation. Another thing is there a framework culture fit? So does it fit within the company? We need to keep in mind that OKRs expect ruthless prioritization, right? And they are stretch goals. So you need to be ready to make really clear choices about what we're going to do now, what we're going to do later, what we're not going to do at all. So they're not there for kind of incremental changes, business as usual, nor are they a container for everything a business is busy with. Right. So the OKRs are not everything we need to do. OKRs are the one thing that we must do. So they're not there for kind of teams who are working on a certain service level, for instance, in IT, right? That's upkeep. That's very important. It is maintenance. But most of the time, these teams or departments, they're just not suited for the use of OKRs. So it's all about a shorter feedback cycle and being able to pivot and adjust the strategy to achieve the goals. And the teams don't need to be agile to apply OKRs, but the data does need to be easily available to review frequently, right? So in that way, the culture also needs to be there for providing these check-ins regularly, right? For improvement's sake. And another thing that is really important, do we have buy-in from the top? So even though these transformations often come from management, do we have actual buy-in? Do the leaders understand why we're doing this? Do they actually want to do this? Or is it just something that, they heard from somebody else, or it's been directed from somewhere else and they think, yeah, okay, we'll do it? Or do they really think something is going to, change? And are we ready for this change? Is leadership also well trained in applying OKRs? I've also had instances where leadership said, we don't need training, just train the employees. Okay, but
yeah, I have seen that.
Right? Same with agility. They're like, yeah, but we don't need to know how that works. And I'm like, well, you do, because you need to lead this. You need to set these goals together with your employees. So you really need to understand how this works for us to implement it efficiently, right? You are there to drive this change. If you don't want to drive it, then who will? right? Because the employees are waiting for your leadership and your direction. So you're actually the first group who needs to be trained. So these are all kind of thought questions that you need to tackle if you really want a successful OKR implementation.
Okay, so I'm curious to know right now, what have been the craziest, I will say, response from an employee, a leader, or manager, or whatever? What has been the crazy one that you have received when doing this kind of implementation? I'm just, it's curious to know about that.
I think the craziest one was a rather positive one. A department lead who was just busy for 3 months developing a whole structure with strategic pillars and what their vision is for the coming 3 to 4 years in e-commerce. Saw my presentation on OKRs and said, well, I guess we're ready to throw it all out the window and start again. And we actually did. So we we held some sessions and we actually got the OKRs started, and they've been really happy and really successful. So we've actually used their example a lot in trainings after this, and that lead has become a really great ambassador for the OKR program within the company. So he actually also participates in trainings and also coaching other teams as well, through their struggles as they're implementing OKRs. So that was pretty crazy and also pretty positive.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted also to understand, I mean, on one side is because sometimes it gets confused between OKRs and KPIs. And on the other hand is about how do you find like implementing OKRs at different levels, but without being the whole company. Meaning, like, okay, for my work, I'm in IT or I'm in the marketing department, I'm implementing OKR within my work, but not to a team level or a department level. And at the same applies when, okay, the IT or the the marketing is working with OKRs, but not the rest of the company. So how do you see that, your vision on implementing OKRs that way? So 2 questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one regarding the difference between KPIs and OKRs, the way I see it, and I've seen a great image from Purdue. I'm not associated with them, as it's not sponsored or anything, but I think they have a really great explanation on this. So actually, if you want kind of a short guide on OKRs, just to understand how it works, Purdue is a great source for that. And they make this comparison of OKRs being kind of your goal and your destination, and maybe some milestones as you're getting to your destination if you're driving a car, and KPIs being your dashboard, right? So the difference is OKRs are your destination. Where are we trying to get to? Whereas KPIs are telling you if you've got enough gas, if your engine's overheating, if your airco is on or not, which will make your journey towards that destination possible or not, because if you run out of gas, you're not going to make it, right? So KPIs are really there for you to monitor kind of the health of, let's say, your organization or whatever process that you're talking about. It could be sales, could be onboarding, could be retention, could be, customer satisfaction, whatever that might be. And they're really there for maintaining the health of that process, right? You could also use it to identify kind of problem areas that need improvement, but they are still more kind of business as usual. And KPIs are there forever, right? Your dashboard in your car is there forever, no matter what destination you're going towards. So as a target, they always kind of have an acceptable threshold defined, right? This is the range that we need to be in, and they are maintenance oriented. They're also quantitative, the same way as OKRs are, right? The key results, at least, the objectives are always qualitative. But the KPIs are also influenced by multiple internal and external factors. So it's not always linked to the successful outcome for the team. So it could also be internally oriented. right? It could also be output related. Whereas OKRs are really there to drive change. So you're missing link between ambition and reality. Right, so they're there to drive innovation and achieve kind of sustainable changes in the organization, and they help you solve the problems that you've identified. So as a target, they don't have kind of an acceptable threshold. They're really ambitious stretch goals, and they're growth and definitely outcome oriented. So the teams, let's say, who set OKRs quarterly, bottom up, they can directly influence the success of the company. And if we're talking about your second question, so regarding the teams and kind of cascading, I think that also really depends on the scale of the organization, because in an organization where we started implementing OKRs, it was about 180 people when we started, and we had 2 levels, 3 levels actually cascading down. So we had, the top company OKR going down to the departments, and then out of the departments, it trickled down to team level. And we noticed that especially with quarterly key results, the teams didn't have time to set different goals for every quarter, right? Because they would need to do the measurements and perform all of these calculations just to be able to get to a baseline, even before the quarter has started, right? To be able to report on it throughout the quarter and at the end of the quarter. All of that also needed to be registered in our kind of goal system. And we felt that it was too much of an administrative burden for the teams. I've spoken to leadership and I've spoken to the teams, and we were also doing OKR reviews, and we realized that leadership doesn't really need such in-depth information on the operational side from the teams on kind of how well they're doing. So there were way too many updates from way too many teams. Leadership said, yeah, this is way too detailed. And the team said, yeah, it's so much work for us to actually, get these key results calculated. So we figured, yeah, but why are we doing that actually? Let's just throw that level out. So let's have the top company objectives be our only objectives. And that went way better. So we did connect the team projects as initiatives under each key result. So we knew, if the team is building new templates for the onboarding process for, let's say, a mail chain, right? That is an initiative for improving the onboarding process or improving the retention of new customers. So customers who have been with us for less than 3 months, right? That's all to improve that. The data science department that's building a new retention model, they are really there for the key result responsible for customer satisfaction of customers who have been with us for 6+ months, right? And improving the retention percentage. So we could link the team's tasks and responsibilities to the key results that they were working with without making them write up their own metric key results. So it really depends on kind of what scale you're working with and what makes sense in that organization, because it's not one size fits all. It really revolves around the individuals working there and what makes sense for them.
Thank you for sharing that. Lashmi, I see you thinking. I don't know if you want to ask something. The cat is here, by the way. He's sleeping. He came from outside. He's sleeping, so next to me.
So cute.
So thank you, Polina. I mean, I can imagine all these experiences. Like, I'm a visual person, so visually, I'm just envisioning all those experiences that you have been sharing. So you have been talking about this culture part, right? So you have come across organizations where the culture is not supportive at the individual or team level. Maybe the leadership team is all set. They are ready to get going, get the ball rolling. But then the individuals, the team is not ready. So how have you gone about, could OKR implementation happen even at that level, be it quarterly or whatever, for these teams, or maybe at the functional level or whatever? If yes, how did it go about? And maybe success story, or if you could share, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So indeed, you've got organizations where they kind of all move at the same pace. And you also have organizations of parts or of organizations where there's really a culture clash and they're a little bit more hesitant about, doing the next new thing and just saying like, yeah, why do we need to change so often? Why do we need to do this again? And we already have the quarterly reporting and we already have so many reports that we need to deliver and so many updates and we have, everything. Why do we need this new thing? So one thing that I always say is you need to throw out everything else, right? So if you already have a goal setting methodology, stick to that. If you already have, the heart model that you're using, great. If you have a KPI framework, which you actually use to report on and also identify your areas of improvements and use that to define what you're going to be working on in the near future, use that. Then you don't need OKRs because it will just provide you with kind of extra work. And also, what are you actually going to focus on? Because one framework says this is important, OKRs say that is important. What is it that you're actually going to focus on? And what I found to be most effective in organizations that are kind of hesitating is to pick one or two teams that are really on board and that are really enthusiastic about it. So they could be inherently agile. They could be new teams or project teams that are put together where they're still kind of, storming right before they begin performing, right? So they've gone through the forming stage, they're storming. So that's a great way to kind of get in there and say, okay, well, since you don't know what you're doing yet, maybe let's put OKRs into it. And once they have some successes to show, it's way easier to use them as ambassadors as well to show the rest of the teams, how they could implement OKRs to their advantage and to their success. So I really love kind of using the team's examples to show what they could achieve with it, and then still have them make their choice. We in certain implementations, we said everybody needs to use OKRs and we're just going for it. You need to push through it. That has not been as successful as if you let the teams kind of figure it out, and use maybe other teams as an example and then see whether they want to make that change. So kind of this cascaded rollout, in my experience, has been much more successful than one big bang, where you're not focusing about what the actual individuals do or do not want or are or not ready for.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Laura. Yeah.
Okay. I think that both of us would like to, maybe the audience as well, would like to know or would like to hear about your learning, about your experience all these years, about 10 years already. Yes, what are the best things that you can say about that experience and what resonates most with you right now at the present moment?
Do you mean with OKR implementation specifically?
Yes, I mean, because we are talking about OKRs, but then we relate it with transformation as well. So if you want to touch both, it's okay. It's an open-ended question in that sense.
Yeah. I think I've kind of touched upon this topic already a little bit in the different parts of the podcast. I think it's really important to understand what the motivation is before you're getting started, right? Whether that be the use of OKRs or any other methodology, whether that be agility. So really, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And also, are you ready for this change? Are you ready to do what's needed to kind of make it happen? Specifically, with regards to agile transformation, I'm realizing that it's not as effective if you're just implementing it as what I call zombie scrum. There are a lot of teams and organizations that are just going for scrum or agility because they've heard, yeah, this is cool, let's do that. And that can create a problem on two fronts. One, they don't understand what they're doing at all. So leadership, again, just kind of dives into it and says, okay, let's do a session every month and let's call it Scrum, where we come together and we brainstorm about what we want to do. So there is absolutely no understanding of, what Scrum is, what the events are, what the artifacts are, who are the team members, who is invited to each specific event, and whom not, and why not, right? Because it's all about letting the team provide the maximum value that they can. And that's why the different parts of the Scrum team have such distinct roles. That's why it's so important to have a dedicated product owner, a dedicated Scrum Master, a dedicated development team, which are not distracted by their work for any other project, right? That's why it's so important for management to not participate in any of those rituals besides, let's say, the sprint review, where indeed all of the stakeholders are invited for them to see what the team has actually delivered in the sprint, whether it was a week long or 3 weeks long, and provide their feedback from the user side on what they want and whether they're happy with what's been delivered or whether some pivots need to be made, right? So one is kind of bad implementation where they don't kind of understand what Scrum is and what it's there for and what it isn't there for. And another thing is that they just continue with this ritual without actually changing anything, right? You might be running retrospectives. You might even come up with areas of improvement. And some things are easy to fix already from the beginning, right? That they might switch from a 2 weeks long sprint to a 3 week long sprint. Maybe that works better for some teams, right? Or that some people leave the team because they don't feel like they are kind of providing the same value. That sometimes also happens with QA testers because their work is kind of ongoing and they don't always need to be dependent on the specific sprint goal, for instance, right? That could happen. So once you've fixed the main kind of pressure points within the first couple of sprints, sometimes you come into this Scrum fatigue where you kind of fix what you could fix and the other things are so big that you don't even know how to approach it. It could be, for instance, the architecture of a specific system. It could be a database that's not functioning very well, but then you'd have to kind of erase the whole thing and revamp your whole platform. For which the company might not be ready for, or not have the budget, not want to invest months worth of work into changing that. And then you really don't know how to kind of advance from there, but you're also not willing to step away from these kind of fixed practices. And that's where I say you've done your initial due diligence around learning what Scrum is and how to implement it perfectly by the book. Now, with all of this maturity, you've got the freedom to tweak it to your advantage. So a lot of the teams would switch from Scrum to Scrumban, for instance, or to Kanban later once they've achieved this maturity. But I always advise to start with Scrum because that's how they learn this kind of visibility, shorter feedback cycles, right? To work with the customer. Otherwise, sometimes if they start with Kanban, all of that is lost, right? So I say you should always start with Scrum in the purest form that it can be, and then you can tweak it to your advantage.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I have one last question. I know you said we talk about that culture and the size also of the company and the mind of each member. The company plays a key role. Have you noticed any difference or something that you can highlight between companies that are like fully remote from the other ones that has an hybrid structure, or maybe they are 100% on-site companies? And also, when I'm talking about culture, I'm talking about also the country culture. So if that also has played a role in that sense.
For sure. Yeah. So I noticed a large difference between teams that are fully remote or companies that are fully remote and companies who work on site. And the largest difference is the distance to each other, because the physical distance, if that's smaller, that kind of allows individuals to approach each other way more informally. So people are not used to calling each other on Teams just for a quick question. They might send each other a Teams message or send an email, whereas in the office you would just come by and say, hey, I've got a really great idea. With remote teams, that interaction is lost, right? You don't come across people at the coffee corner and suddenly discuss this great idea that you might have had on how to fix something or solve something. So for remote teams, it's really important to engage them in this collaborative process, right? So to create, let's say, breakout sessions, if we do QBRs, which are quarterly business reviews, where we evaluate the success of our OKRs and how far we've come in the past quarter. After that, especially with remote teams, we implement brainstorming sessions, whereas we say, okay, this quarter, team A and team C can provide us with, a problem that they're facing right now that they don't know how to solve. And then we just invite everybody from the company to join in, depending on their expertise, whether they feel like they could, contribute something. And then in 20 to 30 minutes, with the help of some post-it notes and the kind of a layout, let's say on a Miro board or a mural or something like this, to come up with a few solutions so that team can actually use that to write up some epics and some initiatives for the upcoming quarter. And that's worked brilliantly for us. So that could be used, for instance, as an idea to mitigate this kind of lack of informal interaction between the teams who are working remotely. In terms of cross-cultural collaboration, yes, for sure. There's been, there have been a few cultural clashes, based on a couple of teams. Normally what we notice is teams in the US are really, really performance-oriented and also rather concerned about how their performance on the OKRs might affect, let's say, their bonuses or their targets personally. Right, that's really a cultural thing, and that's the way kind of business is oriented in the US. Whereas, for instance, people in Holland are really straight and to the point, and they're not hiding anything. So if they don't like something, they're just going to tell you right off. So they could come across as a little bit harsh or maybe even aggressive in certain sessions. So if they're setting OKRs, for instance, right, they're just going to come up with whatever they've got on their mind. They're going to write everything on the post-its. And a lot of employees, for instance, from Asian cultures, they can find that a little bit intimidating or aggressive and think that maybe the Dutch are taking too much of an initiative or, saying what they should do. And that is not the case. That's really important to have a facilitator help in these sessions and in these coaching sessions and in these OKR setting sessions to kind of mitigate these effects. So really to feel the room and figure out, what's going on here, and to pivot these exercises and these kind of brainstorming sessions a little bit to, help the teams out. And that's why coaching is also really important. And it's also important to come up with ambassadors within your organization who can help these teams and the team leads and leadership as well to find their way in OKRs and also in these OKR, sessions. And also, how do you do the business reviews? How do you do the OKR reviews? To make sure that we collaborate effectively across the globe.
I see. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's like I would love to ask you more about that part in particular, because it's like I'm in love with that part also of the change and working with global companies. But then we can do that in another instance. Okay, it's like I have two more questions for now, if that's okay with you also, Lashmi, so we can close this episode. The first one is, what is the best thing that can come to your mind right now about you as a OKR implementation? You, Polina, as an OKR implementation, what's the best thing that you can say right now?
As advice to other people?
Maybe, yes, that could work. Yes.
I mean, as an experience for me, what I really love about this is how inspired people get, right? So sometimes we do a session with 300 people, sometimes remote, sometimes on site. And when I see people's eyes light up and I see them walk out of the room, having kind of taken something with them and they're going to their teams and they want to hand it over, that's what I get really, really passionate and excited about. So I love doing this because it makes people's eyes shine, right? Not everybody, not all 300 people are going to walk out with this, but even if it's 10 people who are truly, truly excited about implementing this, I'm really happy and I'm really satisfied, with the job I'm doing, because that's what it's about, right? So OKRs, to me, I think the most important thing is they are not there as an extra kind of set of work. They're there to make your life easier. So I think the really important thing about OKRs is to implement it in such a way that it makes your life easier. So remember, it's just a tool there to help you. If it feels like it's asking something from you, change it, right? So either change how you're using it or don't use it at all. So really see it as a tool and something helpful.
Thank you so much for that. My next question is, how do people reach out to you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
That's good. Okay, we will add that on the episode description as well. So yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Lashmi, if you want to say something else.
A big thanks. That's all I can say to Polina. And her passion, like Polina, your passion is so very, very evident. And thank you. It's I'd say it's contagious in its own way. It's like people get that. They like those who walk out, right? You said even those 10 people, that means they have got that, vibes of yours, and they understand the importance of it, and they're all ready to rock and roll, if I can say so, right? So thank you. It's been wonderful listening and learning all of that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Polina, for your time, your experience. And we hope to see you soon in another episode or maybe in another format. So keep in touch, and thank you so much again.
Thank you.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks to everyone who makes these podcasts possible. In particular, thanks to the guest speakers and to you who are on the other side listening. If you liked it and were able to learn something new today, we invite you to share it with your entire network. We also invite you to subscribe to our different channels to follow our latest news. If you are interested in being part of these series, you can apply by clicking on the link that is in the general presentation of the podcast. Until next time.